When I won $2.5 million in the lottery, my parents demanded I hand half to their favorite daughter. I said no. The next morning, I was stunned to see them burning my lottery check. They sneered, "If you won't share, you get nothing." I just laughed because the check they burned was actually. Can you even imagine? One day you're just Mackenzie, navigating life, student debt, and a family that's always seen your sister as the golden child. The next, you've won the lottery, and that supposed blessing explodes into the most shocking, heartbreaking betrayal you could ever fathom. Nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for walking into my own apartment to find my mother burning what she thought was my winning ticket, while my father coldly declared, "If you won't share, you won't get a penny." But their smug faces quickly melted into pure, unadulterated shock when I just burst out laughing. Before I tell you why I was laughing, let me set the scene. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Ohio was complicated. From the moment my sister Brooke was born, when I was 6, it was crystal clear who the favorite was. Most parents try to hide it, right? Not mine. Brooke wanted dance lessons. Money appeared. I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math. I worked extra shifts at the grocery store. Brooke's artwork was a gallery. My academic achievements got a casual, "That's nice, Mackenzie, but did you see what Brooke made today?" They weren't monsters, not really. They provided basics. But the imbalance? It was constant. Undeniable. It just kept going. Brooke dropped out of college, then found herself and her parents' wallet through 3 different majors and 5 career changes. Me? I worked through school, kept my scholarship, and still graduated with a mountain of student loan debt. By my 30s, I'd built a decent life, a steady marketing job, a cozy 1-bedroom, enough savings for a dinner out. Not rich, but fiercely independent. And proud of it. Then came that Tuesday. Normal day. I stopped for gas, calculating pennies until payday. On a whim, I grabbed a lottery ticket. I rarely played, but that day, something just said, "Why not?" The cashier smiled, "You never know, right?" I laughed, lightning has to strike somewhere, and tucked it away, completely forgetting about it. That evening, heating up leftover pasta, the lottery drawing came on. I remembered the ticket. Pulled it out, expecting the usual disappointment. First number matched. My heart fluttered. Second. I sat up straight, my pulse kicking. Third. Fourth. Fifth. When the final number matched, I literally stopped breathing. I checked, rechecked, convinced my eyes were playing tricks. But there it was. All 6. The jackpot, $2.5 million. I sat there for 30 minutes, just staring, stunned. Eventually, I took a photo, then hid the ticket in a Ziploc bag, tucked inside my copy of Pride and Prejudice. Safest place I could think of. My hands shook as I called Rachel, my best friend. "You need to come over. Now." I'm not joking or exaggerating. 20 minutes later, she burst in, clearly worried. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Wordlessly, I showed her the ticket, my shaky notes of the numbers. She whispered, "Holy shit." Her eyes widened. "Mackenzie, holy shit. Is it real?" I asked, my voice tiny. "Can you check again?" "I think I'm hallucinating." She pulled out her phone, confirmed the numbers. "It's real. Oh my God, it's real. You just won $2.5 million. That night was a blur of disbelief, pure elation, and a little bit of fear. Rachel stayed over, and we talked until sunrise. Student loans gone. A house. Not just any house, a beautiful home with a yard. Investments. Travel. Donating to causes I cared about. My life had changed. The next morning, I called in sick. Rachel drove me to the Lottery Commission headquarters. I was too nervous to drive. They verified everything, explained the options, lump sum or annuity, and set up the ceremonial, big check photo op. The actual funds, they said, would take 2 weeks to process. As I held that oversized check, cameras flashing, it finally sank in. My life had changed forever. But I had no idea how it was about to test my relationships and expose the ugly truths about my family. I went home with a folder full of paperwork and a novelty check. The lottery officials had warned me, keep it private until the funds are secure. Winners get besieged. But they were my family. My parents. Brooke, my sister. And I, perhaps stupidly, wanted them to see me, to finally acknowledge my success. A few days later, I decided to tell them at Sunday dinner, our monthly obligation. I arrived early, helping Mom in the kitchen, rehearsing my speech. "You seem different," she observed, chopping vegetables. "Something happen at work?" "You could say that," I replied, a small smile I couldn't suppress. "Let's wait till everyone's here." Dad came in, asking about my apartment's plumbing, issues I'd soon leave behind forever. At the table, I took a deep breath. "I have some news. Something pretty incredible happened last week. I won the lottery." They just stared. "The lottery?" Dad repeated, like $20? "No," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "The state lottery. All 6 numbers. It's $2.5 million. Profound silence. Then explosions of shock and congratulations. My mother actually hugged me. A rare event. "Oh my goodness, Mackenzie. This is unbelievable," she exclaimed. "Wait until Brooke hears this." And there it was. Not even a full minute of celebration, and Brooke was already mentioned. As if on cue, the front door opened, and in swept Brooke, fashionably late, as usual. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was awful. What did I miss?" Mom practically tripped over herself. Mackenzie won the lottery, $2.5 million. Brooke's expression went from surprise to excitement, then to something calculating. She hugged me with unusual enthusiasm. "That's amazing, Mac. We're going to have so much fun with this." The knot in my stomach tightened at her use of "we." Before I could even respond, Dad chimed in. "This is perfect timing, actually. Brooke, tell your sister about your situation." Brooke at least looked slightly embarrassed. "It's not a big deal, really. I'm just in a bit of a financial bind with the business." Her business was her latest venture, an overpriced bohemian clothing boutique she'd started 6 months ago. I already knew it was failing. "More than a bit of a bind," Dad corrected. "The credit card debt alone is nearly $30,000. And then there's the inventory loan. Dad, please." Brooke interrupted, shooting him an annoyed look. Then, with a practiced smile at me, "But hey, that's not important right now. This is about your amazing news. Though, I mean, if you were thinking about helping family, I wouldn't say no." I sat there, food forgotten. Not one question about how I felt. No inquiries about my plans, my dreams. Just an immediate pivot to how my windfall could solve Brooke's problems. "I haven't even received the money yet," I said carefully. "There's a whole process. I need to speak with financial advisors, but you will help your sister, of course," Mom interjected, as if it were a done deal. Family helps family. With so much money, you can easily clear Brooke's debts and give her business a proper chance. The knot tightened. "I haven't made any decisions yet. This just happened, and I'm still processing everything." "What's there to process?" Dad's tone hardened. "Your sister needs help, and now you can provide it. That's what family does." "What about my student loans?" I countered. "Or the fact that I've been living paycheck to paycheck, trying to build some security for myself? Don't I deserve to take care of my needs first?" "Don't be selfish, Mackenzie," Mom said, her voice dripping with the disappointment I knew too well. "Your sister has a real business with real potential. This could be her big break." "And what about my big break?" I asked, a lifetime of resentment bubbling to the surface. For once in my life, something amazing has happened to me, and immediately it becomes about Brooke. Brooke's expression turned hurt. "I can't believe you're being like this. If I won, I'd share with you without hesitation." The hypocrisy was almost laughable. 3 years ago, she got a $10,000 inheritance from Grandma and blew it on a luxury Bali vacation without so much as offering us dinner. The rest of the meal dissolved into tense arguments. My parents alternated between guilt trips and thinly veiled demands. By the time I left, the joy of my windfall was thoroughly tarnished. I drove home, fighting back tears of frustration and disappointment. Once home, I poured myself a glass of wine and called Rachel. "That bad?" she asked. "They didn't even wait 5 minutes," I choked out. Not a single question about what this means for me, or what I might want to do with my own money. "I'm not surprised, but I'm still sorry," Rachel replied gently. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. Exactly what I planned before dinner. Pay off my debts, secure my future, and make smart decisions. And apparently, set some very firm boundaries with my family. I had no idea how severely those boundaries would be tested. The very next morning, my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. Mom. I've been thinking about our conversation, she began, no preamble. I think you were just overwhelmed, which is understandable. But now that you've slept on it, I'm sure you see how important it is to help your sister. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Headache already forming. Mom, it's not even 8, and I'm getting ready for work. Can we talk about this later? What's there to talk about? This is what family does, Mackenzie. Your father and I have always taught you girls to support each other. The irony, I tell you. I hung up mid-sentence and silenced my phone. I needed space to think. At work, I vaguely mentioned to my supervisor that I might need personal time for a family situation. I wasn't ready to disclose the win. At lunch, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and a text from Brooke. Hey sis, totally understand you needing time to process. No pressure, but when you're ready, I have spreadsheets showing exactly how much I need to clear my debts and get the business profitable. Love you, Red Heart. I just closed it. That afternoon, I called a financial advisor recommended by the Lottery Commission, someone who specialized in sudden wealth. We scheduled an appointment for the next day. That evening, the calls continued. Dad's voicemail was particularly pointed. Mackenzie, your mother is very upset by your behavior. We raised you better than this. Call us back immediately so we can discuss how you're going to help your sister. I didn't. Instead, I researched financial planning for lottery winners, jotting down questions. The next morning, Miss Thornton, my financial advisor, laid out the realities. After taxes, the lump sum was closer to $1.4 million. Still life-changing, but not the full $2.5 million. First priority, emergency fund and high-interest debts. Then, diversified investments. When I mentioned my family, she frowned. This is common, unfortunately. I advise clients to establish clear boundaries early. Any gifts should be carefully considered and formally documented to avoid ongoing expectations. I left her office with a preliminary plan and a stronger resolve. But my family wasn't making it easy. That evening, a group text from Mom, including Dad and Brooke, we're all getting together tomorrow evening at 7 to discuss the family financial plan now that Mackenzie has come into this blessing. Mackenzie, please bring whatever paperwork you have so far so we can understand the timeline. I stared at it. The audacity. Scheduling my financial meeting without me. I replied simply, I won't be attending. My financial decisions are my own to make. The response was immediate. And heated. Dad called, and when I didn't answer, another voicemail. Your behavior is completely unacceptable. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning your back on your own sister when she needs help? I'm extremely disappointed in you. The barrage continued all day. Brooke tried a different tactic, a long, emotional text about how her business was her dream, and how a small portion of my winnings could make it successful, and she'd pay me back someday. I just ignored it. Meanwhile, I went back to the Lottery Commission to finalize taking the lump sum. I did the official big check ceremony again for press materials. They reminded me, actual funds in 2 weeks. After the ceremony, I stopped by a secure post office box I'd rented and deposited the commemorative check, along with copies of all my lottery documents. The originals? Safe deposit box. I was taking no chances. When I arrived home that evening, there they were. My parents and Brooke, sitting in their car outside my apartment building. My stomach dropped. I parked and reluctantly approached. We need to talk, Dad said, firm. Since you wouldn't come to us, we've come to you. I glanced around the parking lot. This was not a public conversation I wanted. Fine, but I have nothing new to say. Inside my small apartment, the tension was palpable. Mom immediately started scrutinizing the space with thinly veiled disapproval. Dad planted himself commandingly in the living room. Brooke perched on the edge of my couch, uncomfortable but determined. This has gone on long enough, Dad began. You've had time to process your good fortune, and now it's time to discuss how this will benefit the family. Specifically, Mom added, how much you'll be giving to Brooke to clear her debts and properly fund her business. I took a deep breath. I've thought about this a lot. I've decided I need to secure my own future first. I have student loans to pay off, retirement to plan for, and student loans. Dad interrupted, incredulous. You're going to be a millionaire. Who cares about student loans? I do, I replied firmly. I've worked hard to stay afloat with those payments for years. And the money isn't as much as you think after taxes. But still plenty to help your sister. Mom insisted. Brooke leaned forward. Mac, I only need about $80,000 to clear everything and have a proper marketing budget. That's nothing compared to what you're getting. $80,000 is not nothing, I countered. And what happens when that runs out? Will you need another infusion of cash in 6 months? That won't happen, Brooke insisted. Though her eyes slid away from mine. This is different. I just need a proper chance. Like the proper chance you had with graphic design, I couldn't help but say, the bitterness seeping in. Or interior decorating, or becoming a yoga instructor. Each time Mom and Dad supported you financially, and each time you abandoned it when it got difficult. That's enough. Dad snapped. Your sister is trying to build something of her own. All she needs is adequate capital, which you now have in abundance. This is about family responsibility, Mackenzie. Where was this family responsibility when I was working 2 jobs to pay for college? Years of resentment finally spilled over. Where was it when I needed help with the down payment for a car so I could get to work? You've always had different standards for Brooke and me. That's not true. Mom protested weakly. It is true, and we all know it, I said, my voice trembling slightly. For once in my life, something good has happened to me, and I deserve to enjoy it without guilt or manipulation. The argument raged for over an hour, getting increasingly heated. My parents cycled through guilt, anger, and even attempts at negotiation. What about $40,000 instead? Brooke alternated between playing the victim and making veiled accusations about my character. Finally, emotionally exhausted, I asked them to leave. I've made my decision. I won't be bullied or manipulated into changing my mind. Dad's face hardened. If this is your attitude, don't expect to remain part of this family. The words hit like a physical blow, but I stood my ground. If your acceptance is conditional on me giving away my financial security, then maybe that's for the best. After they left, I collapsed onto my couch, emotionally drained, but oddly relieved. I had finally stood up for myself after decades of accepting second-place status. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I called Rachel. I need some space from my family, and I don't trust them not to show up again. Of course, she said immediately. Pack a bag and come over. Wine will be waiting. As I packed, I had no idea how prophetic my distrust would prove to be. I spent 3 relatively peaceful days at Rachel's, going to work, but returning to her place. My family continued their campaign of calls and texts, but I kept my responses minimal. My decision is final. On the 4th day, I needed to retrieve some work documents from my apartment. Rachel offered to come, but had an important meeting. I'll be fine, I assured her. I'll grab what I need and be out in 10 minutes. I chose my lunch break, figuring they'd be at work. As I approached my door, everything seemed normal. I unlocked it, stepped inside, and immediately sensed something was wrong. Voices. From my living room. I froze, heart pounding, then recognized my parents. They were in my apartment. For a moment, I considered backing out, calling the police. But anger overrode caution. I strode into the living room. What are you doing in my apartment? I demanded. Mom and Dad stood by my coffee table. Between them, in a small metal trash can from my own kitchen, flames were rising from what looked like paper. A jolt of horror. I realized what was happening. My mother was burning what appeared to be my lottery check. Dad turned to me, his expression cold and determined. If you won't share, you won't get a penny. I rushed forward, but it was too late. The paper was mostly ash, flames consuming what little remained. Mom stepped back, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. Now we can discuss a fair arrangement, she said. You'll need to reapply for the prize. I stared at them, stunned. My mind raced. How did they get in? What exactly had they burned? And most importantly, Did they really think this would work? How did you get into my apartment? I managed, my voice surprisingly steady. We still had the spare key you gave us last year when you had the flu, Dad replied, matter-of-factly. You never asked for it back. The violation. The calculated nature of their actions. It was almost too much. And yet, as the initial shock faded, something unexpected happened. I started to laugh. It began as a small chuckle, then quickly grew into full-blown laughter. My parents exchanged confused glances, clearly unprepared. What's so funny? Mom demanded. Do you think this is a joke? I struggled to compose myself, wiping tears from my eyes. Actually, yes. This is hilarious. You've lost your mind, Dad said, his confidence wavering. No, I finally found clarity, my laughter subsiding, but a smile remaining. I finally found clarity. Do you really think that's the actual lottery check? Now it was their turn to look confused. Mom glanced at the smoldering remains. What do you mean? We saw the photos online from the lottery commission. You holding the check. That oversized check is a prop for photos, I explained, a strange calm settling over me. It's not the actual payment method. No lottery commission hands out real checks for millions of dollars like that. Their expressions shifted from confusion to uncertainty. The actual payment is being processed electronically, I continued. What you just burned was a commemorative copy I received as a souvenir. It has no monetary value whatsoever. The color drained from Mom's face. Dad, always quick to bluster, shook his head. You're lying. You're just saying that because we destroyed it. In response, I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and turned the screen toward them, showing a message from the Lottery Commission confirming my electronic funds transfer was being processed. The money will be deposited directly into an account I've set up specifically for this purpose, I said calmly. There was never a real check to burn. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stood frozen, the reality of their failed manipulation sinking in. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice small, suddenly conciliatory. Mackenzie, we were just trying to break into my apartment and destroy what you thought was my financial security, I finished for her. Yes, I can see that. You're blowing this out of proportion, Dad attempted, his authoritative tone returning. We're your parents. We were just trying to bring you to your senses. By committing breaking and entering and attempted destruction of property, I shook my head in disbelief. Do you have any idea how unhinged that sounds? Just then, the front door opened and Brooke walked in, carrying a takeout bag. She stopped short, seeing me. Oh, you're here. She looked nervously between me and our parents. I was just bringing lunch for Mom and Dad while they talked to you. While they trespassed in my apartment and tried to destroy what they thought was my lottery check, I corrected, watching her eyes widen. I didn't know they were going to do that, she protested quickly. They just said they were going to wait for you to come home so we could all talk again. Whether she was telling the truth or not didn't matter. The fact that any of them thought it was acceptable to enter my home without permission spoke volumes. All of you need to leave now. My voice was steady, the finality unmistakable. Mackenzie, please, Mom began, her tone shifting to pleading. We made a mistake. We were just so worried about the family being torn apart over money. No, I countered. You are worried about losing access to money you believe you're entitled to. There's a difference. After everything we've done for you, Dad started. That's exactly the problem, I interrupted. You've convinced yourselves you've done so much for me, when the reality is I've been largely on my own since I was a teenager. You're not entitled to my lottery winnings, and your actions today have shown me exactly who you are. I moved to the door and held it open. Leave now, or I call the police and report a breaking and entering. Your choice. They gathered their things in stunned silence. As Brooke passed me at the door, she paused. This isn't fair. You're being cruel. No, Brooke, I replied quietly. Cruel is expecting someone to sacrifice their financial security for your series of failed ventures. Cruel is supporting parents who would break into your sister's apartment to destroy her property. You've always been the favorite, and you've used that to your advantage your entire life. That ends today. After they left, I immediately called a locksmith, then started researching security systems. I called Rachel. They did what? She exclaimed. That's insane. Are you okay? Strangely, yes, I replied, surveying my apartment. I think this needed to happen. The illusion is gone. I see them clearly for who they are. And it's actually liberating. That night, my phone buzzed with texts from extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, all expressing concern about the family rift and urging me to reconsider my harsh stance. Clearly, my family had been busy spinning their version. I didn't respond. Instead, I finished packing. I'd already given notice at my apartment and found a short-term rental in a secure building across town. No one in my family knew the address, and I intended to keep it that way. As I sealed the last box, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The money hadn't even hit my account, but I was already experiencing a different kind of wealth, the richness of clarity, and the luxury of finally prioritizing myself. The day after the burning incident, I took a personal day. First, I met with a lawyer, Miss Patterson, recommended by my financial advisor. Breaking and entering is a criminal offense, she explained, as is destruction of property, even if what they destroyed was ultimately just a souvenir. I don't necessarily want to press charges, I said, still conflicted. I just want them to leave me alone. A restraining order might be appropriate, then, she suggested. And I'd recommend documenting everything in case their behavior escalates. Next, I visited the bank for my lottery winnings account. The manager assured me of maximum security. We've worked with lottery winners before. No one can access it without your physical presence and multiple forms of ID. As a final precaution, I alerted the lottery commission to my family's behavior. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think, the representative said sympathetically. Rest assured, we will not discuss your winnings with anyone but you. With these safeguards in place, I returned to my apartment to finish packing. As I sorted through my belongings, my phone rang. Unrecognized number. Hello. I answered cautiously. Mackenzie, it's Aunt Helen. My mother's sister had always been a neutral party, neither encouraging favoritism nor actively opposing it. Aunt Helen, I responded, my tone guarded. I assume you've heard some version of recent events. I've heard your mother's version, she confirmed. But I've known your mother my entire life, so I can read between the lines. What really happened? Something in her voice, genuine concern, no judgment, prompted me to tell her everything. The win, the breaking and entering, the ceremonial check burning. When I finished, she was silent. They broke into your apartment and burned what they thought was your check, she finally asked, horror and disbelief in her voice. Yes, I confirmed. And they genuinely believed that would force me to share the money with Brooke. Good Lord, she muttered. I knew your mother could be dramatic, but this is criminal behavior. The irony, I explained, is there was never an actual check to burn. The giant check is just for publicity photos. The real payment is electronic. Aunt Helen gave a short, incredulous laugh. So, they committed a crime for absolutely nothing. Essentially, yes. Despite everything, I found myself smiling at the absurdity. The look on their faces when I explained it to them. I can imagine, she said. Listen, Mackenzie, I'm sorry this happened to you. And I'm sorry your win has been tainted by all this ugliness. You deserve to enjoy your good fortune without this drama. Her understanding was unexpected. And touching. Thank you, Aunt Helen. That means a lot. For what it's worth, she added, your mother has been calling everyone, trying to rally support. But after hearing what really happened, I think you'll find most of us are appalled. After we hung up, a small measure of relief. At least some of my extended family understood. The next day, as movers loaded my belongings, my phone rang repeatedly. My parents. After the 5th call in 10 minutes, I answered. What do you want? I asked, patience exhausted. We need to talk, Dad said, his tone notably less commanding. Your mother and I have been discussing things, and we realize we may have overreacted. Overreacted? I repeated, incredulous. You broke into my apartment and tried to destroy what you thought was my financial security. That's not overreacting. That's criminal. We were upset, Mom chimed in from speakerphone. We weren't thinking clearly. But we're your parents, Mackenzie. Surely we can move past this misunderstanding. This wasn't a misunderstanding, I corrected her. A misunderstanding is when we miscommunicate about dinner plans. What you did was deliberate and calculated. The point is, Dad interjected, we want to apologize and start fresh. Family is more important than money. I agree completely, I replied. Which is why I was so shocked that you were willing to destroy our relationship over money that isn't even yours. An uncomfortable silence. Mom spoke again. Brooke is very upset. She feels like you're punishing her for our actions. I sighed, watching the last of my boxes leave. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself from people who have demonstrated they don't have my best interests at heart. So what now? Dad asked. You're just going to cut us off completely? For now, yes, I said firmly. I need time and space. I've arranged for my mail to be forwarded, and I'm moving today. Please don't try to contact me for a while. I'll reach out if I'm ready. You can't just disappear. Mom protested. We're your family. Family doesn't break into each other's homes and destroy their property, I reminded her. I have to go now. As I ended the call, a text from Brooke. I know you're angry, but you're being unfair. I had nothing to do with what Mom and Dad did. Call me when you stop being so selfish. The lack of self-awareness was staggering. I blocked her number. That afternoon, settling into my new apartment, a modern one-bedroom in a secure building with a 24-hour doorman, I received an email notification. My bank. The lottery funds had been deposited. It was official. I was a millionaire. I sat on my new couch, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and allowed myself a moment to truly feel the significance. Despite all the family drama, the betrayal, the hurt, this was still an incredible blessing. My phone buzzed. Rachel. All settled in? How's the new place? It's perfect, I replied. And the money just hit my account. Champagne time, she responded immediately. I'll be there in 30 minutes. We're celebrating properly this time. As I awaited Rachel's arrival, I reflected. How differently everything might have unfolded if my family had simply been happy for me. If they'd respected my autonomy, my right to make my own financial decisions. If their love had truly been unconditional. But their actions had revealed important truths. Painful ones, yes, but necessary to acknowledge. And perhaps that clarity was its own kind of fortune. When Rachel arrived, champagne and takeout in hand, we toasted not just to my financial windfall, but to new beginnings and true friendship. To boundaries, Rachel said, raising her glass. And to seeing people clearly, I added, clinking hers. As we ate and talked about my future plans, a sense of peace settled over me. The money would change my life in many ways, but the most valuable change had already occurred. I had finally recognized my own worth and stood firm in protecting it. The weeks following my move were a strange mix of exhilaration and adjustment. With Miss Thornton's guidance, I systematically tackled my financial priorities. First, my student loans. Nearly $68,000 of debt that had shadowed me since graduation. Submitting that final payment brought an unexpected emotional release. I actually cried clicking pay off remaining balance. Next, a robust emergency fund and diversified investment accounts for long-term growth. I bought a modest, beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet, secure neighborhood. Nothing flashy, just a solid, comfortable home I owned outright. No mortgage. You're being remarkably sensible, Miss Thornton commented. Most clients immediately buy luxury cars or take lavish vacations. I've waited too long for financial security to risk it now, I explained. Though I did book a 2-week trip to New Zealand for next month, I added with a smile. I'm not completely boring. At work, I gave my notice. A small lie about an unexpected inheritance seemed safer than announcing a lottery win. I agreed to stay 6 weeks to train my replacement. Through it all, I maintained my distance from my immediate family. They continued to contact me, sometimes apologetic, sometimes accusatory, but I held firm. I did, however, cautiously reconnect with extended family members who reached out with genuine concern. Aunt Helen and I started meeting for coffee. She'd update me. Your parents are telling everyone they're giving you space, she'd say with a knowing look, but the reality is they're beside themselves that they can't find your new address. Have they shown any real remorse? I'd ask, already knowing the answer. She'd shake her head. They're convinced they were justified in trying to help you see reason. Your mother actually said they did it because they love you too much to let you make such a selfish mistake. I'd just sigh. And Brooke? Well, that's interesting, Aunt Helen said, leaning forward. Her business has officially folded. Apparently, she took out some high-interest loans she can't repay. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want my sister to suffer. Don't be too sorry, Aunt Helen replied. Your parents refinanced their house to bail her out. Again. They what? I was genuinely shocked. My parents were in their early 60s, planning to retire soon. That's their retirement security. I know, Aunt Helen said grimly. I tried to talk them out of it, but they insisted Brooke had no other options. She could get a job, like everyone else, I pointed out. That's what I said. But you know how they are with her. Always the exceptional child who deserves exceptional support. The conversation left me troubled. While I'd maintain my boundaries, I didn't wish financial hardship on my parents. I decided to consult Miss Thornton about setting up a small retirement fund for them, not now, but perhaps in the future when emotions had settled. Meanwhile, I was discovering the joy of financial freedom coupled with purpose. With Miss Thornton's help, I established a modest foundation focused on providing financial literacy education to young adults. I partnered with local community colleges, offering workshops on budgeting, understanding credit, and basic investing, all the knowledge I'd struggled to acquire on my own. I also made anonymous donations to causes I cared about, a shelter for domestic violence survivors, the public library that had been my sanctuary, a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. These acts of giving brought me more satisfaction than any luxury purchase could have. I wasn't just changing my own life, I was creating ripple effects that might change others' lives, too. Rachel remained my steadfast supporter. When I confessed my guilt about not helping Brooke, despite having the means, she offered valuable perspective. Your sister doesn't need a bailout. She needs to learn consequences, Rachel pointed out. If you step in now, you're just replacing your parents as her safety net. Nothing will change. I know you're right, I sighed. But I still feel this nagging guilt. That's because you're a good person, Rachel said firmly. But being a good person doesn't mean being a doormat. You can be generous without being exploited. About 3 months after the burning incident, I received an unexpected email from Brooke. Unlike her previous messages, this one seemed more reflective. I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened. I realize now how entitled I must have seemed about your lottery win. The truth is, I was desperate. My business was failing, and I was too proud to admit it. That doesn't excuse my behavior or Mom and Dad's, but I wanted you to know that I understand better now why you reacted the way you did. I miss my sister. I read the email several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Genuine growth, or another manipulation now that her situation had deteriorated. After careful consideration, I replied with a brief, but not unkind, message. Thank you for your email, Brooke. I appreciate your reflection. I'm still processing everything and need more time before considering any kind of reconciliation. I hope you're finding your way forward. Her response came quickly. I understand. For what it's worth, I've finally taken a regular job, assistant manager at Riverside Cafe. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when if you're ready. This small evidence of Brooke taking responsibility for her own financial situation was the first positive sign I'd seen. While I wasn't ready to fully reconnect, it left me open to the possibility that genuine change might be possible, eventually. As my new life took shape, I found myself experiencing a profound sense of peace. My days were filled with meaningful work through my foundation, enjoyable hobbies I'd never had time for, and genuine connections with friends and the extended family members who respected my boundaries. The wealth hadn't changed who I was at my core. I still shopped sales and felt a twinge of guilt splurging, but it had removed the constant background anxiety about money that had been my companion for so long. More importantly, it had catalyzed a necessary transformation in how I viewed myself and my relationships. One evening, as Rachel and I enjoyed dinner on my new patio, she raised her glass. To the unexpected silver lining, she said. Without the lottery, You might never have seen your family so clearly or found the strength to prioritize yourself. I clinked my glass against hers, reflecting on the truth of her words. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't the money itself, I replied, but what it reveals about the people around you and about yourself. 1 year after the lottery changed everything, I stood in the doorway of my home office, surveying the space I'd created. Large windows overlooked a garden blooming with spring flowers. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with volumes I'd always wanted to read. My desk, a beautiful antique I'd carefully restored, held a laptop and a neat stack of documents for my foundation's latest financial literacy program. This room, like my new life, was entirely of my own making. Every element reflected my choices, my values, my vision, not those imposed by family expectations or financial limitations. It was a physical manifestation of the internal journey I'd undertaken. The path to healing hadn't been straightforward. There were days I questioned my decisions, when the weight of family estrangement felt heavier than the relief of boundaries. Nights when I dreamed of reconciliation, waking with a confused mixture of longing and resolve. My therapist, another investment in myself after the lottery, had helped me navigate these complex emotions. Healing isn't linear, she often reminded me. And establishing healthy boundaries with family doesn't mean you've stopped loving them. It means you've started loving yourself. That perspective had been crucial as I cautiously began reconnecting with certain family members. Aunt Helen remained a steady presence, providing updates about my parents and Brooke without pressure or judgment. Through her, I learned my parents had finally paid off their mortgage, thanks to Dad postponing retirement and taking on consulting work. Brooke, meanwhile, had maintained her job at the cafe and even received a promotion to manager. According to Aunt Helen, she had also joined a financial management group and was slowly working to repair her credit. These positive developments eventually led me to accept an invitation to meet Brooke for coffee about 8 months after our estrangement began. We chose a neutral location. The initial awkwardness was palpable. "You look good," Brooke had said, studying me. "Happy?" "I am," I confirmed. "And you?" "Aunt Helen mentioned you're doing well at the cafe." A flash of the old Brooke appeared, a slight wince at the service industry job, but it quickly passed. "It's been a learning experience," she admitted. "Not what I envisioned, but I'm good at it, surprisingly." We talked carefully around the edges of the past at first, focusing on present circumstances. But eventually, we had to address the elephant in the room. "I'm sorry," Brooke said suddenly, interrupting a safe conversation about a new restaurant. "Not just for what happened with Mom and Dad and the check. For everything. For always expecting to be bailed out, for never considering what you might need." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. "Thank you," I said simply, giving her space to continue. "When your money didn't materialize to solve my problems, I had to face some hard truths," she continued. "I've never had to deal with consequences before. Mom and Dad always fixed everything, and I let them because it was easier. It's a pattern that started when we were kids," I acknowledged. "It wasn't entirely your fault, but I participated in it," she countered. "And I benefited from it at your expense." "I see that now." That first meeting ended with a tentative hug and a promise to try again. We'd had several more coffee dates since then, each a little more comfortable. We weren't best friends. Too much history stood between us for that. But we were finding a new, more balanced way to be sisters. My parents were a more complicated matter. While I'd exchanged a few brief emails with them, I wasn't ready for in-person contact. Their apologies still carried undertones of justification, suggesting they hadn't fully recognized the gravity of their actions or the patterns that led to them. "You'll know when or if you're ready," my therapist had assured me. And it's perfectly acceptable if that time never comes. That permission to prioritize my own well-being without guilt had been transformative. I'd spent so much of my life accommodating others' needs and expectations that establishing firm boundaries felt like learning a foreign language. But with practice, it was becoming more natural. The lottery money, while providing material security, had been merely the catalyst for this more profound personal growth. The true wealth I'd gained was in self-knowledge and self-respect. This perspective informed how I managed my financial windfall as well. Rather than defining myself by my bank account or allowing money to become my primary identity, I viewed it as a tool. One that could provide security, yes, but also one that could create positive impact. Through my foundation, I'd helped fund financial literacy programs that had reached over 500 young adults. The feedback from participants was often emotional. Many shared stories of being the first in their families to understand compound interest, investment basics, or the true cost of credit card debt. "You're not just teaching them about money," one community college partner had told me. "You're breaking generational patterns." That comment had resonated deeply. Breaking patterns. Wasn't that exactly what I'd done in my own life? As I moved from my office to the kitchen to prepare dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Just confirmed reservations for New Zealand 2.0 next month. Pack your hiking boots." I smiled, thinking about our upcoming adventure, our second trip to New Zealand. This time, to explore the southern island. Rachel had been my rock throughout this transformative year, celebrating my victories and providing perspective during moments of doubt. "Can't wait." I texted back, thinking of adding a stop in Australia this time. Her reply was immediate. "Yes, let's do it." The freedom to make such decisions, to travel, to explore, to expand my horizons, was something I never took for granted. Neither was the autonomy to choose how I spent my time. In addition to managing my foundation, I'd started taking classes in furniture restoration, a hobby I'd always been interested in, but never had time to pursue. My dining room table was currently covered with the components of an antique radio cabinet I was bringing back to life. As I prepared a simple but delicious dinner of salmon and roasted vegetables, I reflected on how my relationship with money had evolved. The initial panic about making mistakes with my windfall had given way to confidence in my careful decisions. The fear that wealth might change me fundamentally had been replaced by the understanding that it had simply revealed and amplified who I already was. Most importantly, I'd learned that financial wealth, while providing comfort and opportunities, wasn't the most valuable currency in life. Trust, respect, authentic connection. These were the true treasures, and they couldn't be purchased at any price. After dinner, I settled on my porch swing with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined the life I now lived. Not just because of the financial changes, but because of the emotional freedom I'd claimed. The lottery had given me $2.5 million. But my own choices had given me something far more precious, a life aligned with my values, relationships based on mutual respect, and the quiet confidence that came from knowing my own worth. For anyone watching this who might be struggling with family boundaries or finding their own voice, I hope my story encourages you. It's never too late to recognize your value and require others to respect it. The path isn't easy, but the peace waiting on the other side is worth every difficult step. If my journey has resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? What helped you find the courage to stand firm? Share your experiences below and know that your story matters too. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the greatest twist in your story is the moment you decide to become its author.